It's time for Refresh the Cache, the Dynamics 365 Portals podcast on the CRM Audio Network, with your hosts, Microsoft MVPs, Nick Dolman, Colin Vermander, and Sean Tabor.
This episode is brought to you by D365 User Group. D365 User Group is the world's most influential user group community of Microsoft Dynamics 365 and CRM users and partners. Across the globe, members share a common goal of maximizing and advancing the performance of Microsoft Dynamics 365 and CRM so that individuals and companies can improve operations, overcome obstacles, and exceed goals.
All right, everyone. Welcome to, I believe it's episode 8 of Refresh the Cache. And we are here at the end of February, and we have, with me, I have Colin Vermander, the co-host of Refresh the Cache. And today we have a super special guest all the way from Australia. We have George Doubinski joining us. So,
yeah, and it's no longer February.
For George. Okay. It's February for us, though, still.
So this is probably the first podcast ever on the CRM Audio Network that's spanning 2 months. It's so good at the same time.
It's a good way of putting it, that's for sure.
So just going to dive right in. It's been the last time Colin and we chatted, we were talking all about the release notes, and there's a few cool things there we highlighted. CDS for Portals was the big one, and still we're pretty excited. But about a week or two ago, there was an update to the release notes. So again, this shows that this is a continual work in progress, like everything, and it's not set in stone. And one of the things they did there, they ripped out the concept of the self-scheduling on Portals for field service. So what's your guys' reaction to that?
I don't know. I'm not a whole lot surprised, I guess. It was never something that was uptaked in the ADX portals a whole lot without sitting down and doing a lot of customization around that piece as well. It never kind of fit out of the box for the scenarios that people had. So perhaps they got some feedback that what they were providing was just not something that was going to work for the majority of the audience, and kind of gone back to revise it and improve upon it at this point, so that it's something that's more configurable and extensible for people to use. That would be my hope, at least.
Right. George, do you have any thoughts on that, or do you care?
Don't know, really. I never got involved for the reason with that bit, for the reason Colin has mentioned. Out of the box is just not the way a lot of companies do self-scheduling. It also reminds me a little bit the pitch that I've seen when PSA guys were doing some initial kind of marketing pitch of the PSA. And one of the things was self-service app that you fire up and you find projects in your organization, and then you join them and you kind of, join yourself into the project. You find the projects to work on. Now, you guys both worked in a larger organization, so did I. When did that ever happen? That someone would go in and, join the project. Oh, here's some interesting project. I'd like to join that. I mean, it never happens, right? So it's as good as useless feature. That one, the self-scheduling, obviously it does happen, but availability of internal resources, being able to control it, to make it dependent on external ones, that's kind of... needs to be done very carefully, and Colin is right. There's a lot of customizations required before you can make it work, because you're going to have strings attached, and out of the box it didn't have hooks to attach those strings. The other reason could potentially be that there are a lot of changes to URS, so Universal Resource Scheduling, and perhaps it's somehow tied up to that. But I can't really tell.
Yeah, I think it's really more of it was a field service thing. Like I know I was listening to Sean's, I think the At Your Service podcast, and they were pretty excited about it. But
But it's one of those features. Yeah, you get excited when you hear about it, but once you start drilling in and figuring out how to deploy it in the real world, and turns out real world doesn't work in your hypothetical scenarios. Yes, I'm aware it's a field service. I was given PSA as an example of the feature that's saying, yeah, it looks cool in a demo, but nobody works like that. So,
yeah, and it might be one of those things that it doesn't mean it's not coming. It might just mean it's not going to come until the next set of release, like in the fall, or sorry, the October release.
Yeah, let's be honest. It wouldn't be if URS is opened up like promised, then it wouldn't be so big deal to bolt on your own self-scheduling.
Yeah. The APIs and everything are there to do it. I think, and this is whenever I've implemented service scheduling 3 times for clients, and it's been different every time, and it's been complex every time. So maybe it's better left as not even an out-of-the-box feature.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's that. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that was just as an interesting note of the update to release notes. The other one, not really portal related, but it is portal related. They listed sort of announced Forms Pro, and I know that's a little bit outside of the portals, although I do know I've done portal implementations where you actually are filling out forms online, and portals have been used configured for surveys, and I know the ADX portal had some sort of survey capability built into it, but I found it a little bit clunky. It was just sort of the nature of how the portals are built. Forms Pro, on the other hand, I had some looks at it, and it looks like something that's basically going to kill, and I'm not sure if this is the plan, but basically kill off voice of the customer. Have you guys seen Forms Pro, or you think I'm off base on that?
I have not played around with it a lot. I've taken a quick look. There's definitely potential and overlap there. In some ways or in some scenarios, I imagine it makes sense, but perhaps in others, and I'm sure there's probably customers out there that are using voice in the customer in certain ways that Forms Pro does not provide as a full option. I think that's always going to be the case when you have a more mature product versus something that's kind of new coming onto the market. But maybe long term, that's kind of the thought process that they might have.
Yeah, I played with, I kind of tried to do some proof of concept of voice of the customer, and I got it working, but it's complicated. Thinking from an end user's perspective, it'd be like, this is a struggle compared to something like SurveyMonkey or something like that. But I do surveys within forms, just the regular forms, and it's missing some of the features, but it's pretty straightforward. So Forms Pro can take that ease of use.
Look, it will replace voice of the customer in a lot of scenarios. As Colin, I'm hesitant to say what percentage, for example, would be replaced, but it would be a significant one. More importantly, considering the name of the podcast, is it going to replace web forms?
That was always the thing with voice of the customer is, it had the same and way higher capability than the web forms in the portal, but it had no ability to do authentication or do a huge linking to the contact. So I haven't looked at Forms Pro well enough does it have those type of things where it can do authentication, it can link to a contact record really well, and be able to manipulate that data. Like, I submit an application and then I want to edit it later and go in and edit many applications. So
yeah, all I know, like the back end is going to be CDS. But how that entity structure is going to, filter out, that would be interesting to see. And then can we do some of those things? And then because it's CDS, can we do things like firing off flows or things of that sort with that technology?
It would be great if they actually integrated it with the portal. I always thought that with voice of the customer, like if you're going to provide that type of functionality, and that was the one thing that the portal never had, was a drag and drop interface for building web forms, and voice of the customer sort of had that, or had a version of that in some way. So I think they need to integrate Forms Pro as a tool for the portal, and just really make it the way that you can drag and drop forms, and it's not necessarily doing the hard entity forms, because even those are somewhat unapproachable by a lot of the customers or clients of Portal. So
that's true. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see how that might be something that we could, when we're at MVP Summit, we can drill down into, and then if there's non-NDA stuff we can talk about, or down the road we could maybe, if we find out anything and we're allowed to tell it, we'll tell it.
Yeah. I know that there has been integrations between voice of the customer and portals in the past. If you've ever used the Microsoft Experience Dynamics site and tried to apply for an insider program, you're definitely using a Dynamics 365 portal. But inside that, to apply for the actual program, it looks like you're actually probably using a voice of the customer. So
that's
they
why I
can
could
be
never
integrated.
apply for Insider program.
Is that why, George, or was it you should have tried applying under a different name? You might have had more success.
I see. Okay.
We have to go in there sometimes, though, and apply for programs. So
yeah. So some other exciting stuff. A couple weeks ago, also released. Have you guys done anything on Microsoft Learn yet, or MS Learn? Some of the dynamic stuff?
I've taken a look, and I've definitely made it part of some of the learning plans that we have for some of our staff here, but I haven't used it a lot myself.
Yeah, I've kind of scratched the surface, but there is now there's a portal learning path on MS Learn.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Wonder who created that.
I don't know who Microsoft got, but I think those guys are pretty awesome.
I think.
Well,
so.
We'll have to go through it and see, I guess. It needs to be evaluated. So
It's just a start, so it's the first one, just getting started. There will be a couple more. And people always ask, I just perhaps wanted to take a stab at explaining what's the differences. People getting confused. There is Microsoft Learn, which is kind of not dissimilar to Salesforce. Which is a
Trailhead, I think.
Trailhead, yeah, and you Trailblazer. Yeah, I always get confused. Are you a Trailhead, a path called Trailblazer, or a path called Trailhead and you are Trailblazer? Anyway, so then there is OpenADX. So it used to be Microsoft hosted a few courses on openadx.org, but OpenADX is a platform. So now there is openadx.microsoft.com. There is only a couple courses there, but the content, I believe, is being migrated and redeployed. And then there are docs. So people always ask what's the differences, where would I go, and how do I check one or another. And I figured out it's basically a 3-step process, at least in my head. It's what do we need to know? So that the question is what, why, and how. So what do we need to know is defined by what you find on OpenADX. It's kind of curriculum for the courses, defines things like certifications. So it definitely sets up the boundaries, what consultant need to know, what developer need to know, what solution architect need to know, administrator, and so on. It basically set up task-based, so what tasks do they perform. Then there is the why, and that's what Learn is all about. So Microsoft, it's docs.microsoft.com/learn, and then you pick up a learning path, and then you go down that path, and it's nice and easy. Usually it's a content like level 200. The point is to answer question, why do you want to know that? Perhaps a quick walkthrough, a quick exercise, a quick Q&A session, like a quiz session, and you in and out within the matter of an hour or so, and you get your award and the points, and for example, portal course worth whopping 2,700 points, whatever that means. It's like frequent flyer, I don't know. And then there is basically how to do things. So once you know why you want to do it and what do you need to know, how exactly, step by step, detailed instructions. That's what docs.microsoft.com is about. That's product documentation. That goes screen by screen, feature by feature, label by label, and explains what are those settings, what this checkbox does, what that checkbox does, what this radio button do, and so on and so forth. Portals are now on MS Learn, the first pass. There are 2 more to come, so I would be very much interested to hear the feedback, and did those clowns do the good job or not?
Yeah, it's definitely pretty cool, and makes it's a little bit, to me it also kind of reiterates that Portals is a little bit more mainstream than it has been for the last couple of years within Microsoft. So I think good things to come.
Yeah, I really hope they stick with this Microsoft Learn as well, because it's been so scattered previously in the past with the EdX and the Academy and everything. So I hope the Learn is kind of like the equivalent of Docs, because Docs has definitely become an awesome utility to use for documentation, for portals, for Dynamics, and just as a developer accessing documentation. So I really hope that content does well for portals and people do give the feedback and it continues to grow. So
yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
What I love about
absolutely.
What I love about So what I really like about Docs is if you find a mistake or you find something you don't agree with, because it's all tied in GitHub, you can actually do a pull request and fix the documentation and correct it. And then it doesn't happen automatically. Whoever's owning that page has to go through and make sure what you're suggesting is correct. But that does sort of, there's a lot of times where you sort of see something written and you're like, that does not make sense, or that's not correct. And then at least now you can go in, it's like, that's not correct. Here's what it should be. Do a pull request, and then hopefully a day or two later they get back to you saying, yep, your changes have been accepted, or your changes have not been accepted, and here's why.
I actually did go through that exercise just not so long ago. Remember this append and append to? Never ending. People always get them mixed up. The privileges,
yep.
Right? So
yep.
Guess what? In Docs, I was completely mixed up. So not completely, how can you mix up a binary? It's either this or that. So the explanation was other way around, and I pointed it out, and literally a couple of weeks later, I got emails saying, yep, it's all good, it's all fixed.
Cool.
So yeah, definitely. If you notice something, it's like, in those 1984, if you see something, say something.
Yeah.
So does Learn have a similar mechanism for people to contribute like that, or?
I don't believe that it does, though. I don't believe that it does. You can certainly provide feedback, which is not quite the same, but the way you interact with Learn is slightly different. It's not like you randomly jump in between the pages. You follow the path. You kind of follow.
You're going through a progression, yeah.
Yeah, you go through progression, so there's kind of less opportunities for you to to kind of fix and pull, and there is no source to pull. It's also GitHub based, but it's rendered differently. So I think there is a way to provide feedback, but not like in docs where you can fork the project, fix, and create a pull request. No. But that's kind of, learn serves a different purpose. The 100%, correctness of the content is, I wouldn't say it's not important, but it's kind of not a paramount. It's, kind of when you lead someone down the path. I mean, if you deviate slightly from the correct path, it's not a big deal. Whilst docs is kind of a prescription, that is exactly how it should be, a description of the product, reflection of the product. So if something is wrong in docs, it needs to be fixed and it's taken seriously. That's why it's kind of more closed loop on that one than on Learn. Learn is a bit more free form. It's kind of a discussion. It's always the question is, why do you want to do certain things, and that way and not the other way, and or why the product does it in a specific way. Anyway, enough about learning.
Let's talk about the main thing we're talking today. So I wanted to talk about the marketing portal. So an interesting thing when I was reading up on, kind of last fall about, what's new in marketing. I've not implemented the Dynamics 365 marketing. I've touched on click dimensions in the past. And then all of a sudden, so marketing portal comes out, and of course the marketing module came out last year. There was a marketing portal that had like event registrations and things like that. One of the drawbacks was you could register for an event, but you couldn't pay for it. Microsoft kind of left it up to the partners to kind of build out a payment gateway system and all that. And, it worked, but there's a few things like that. Then marketing portal comes out and I'm like, okay, cool. This is the next version. And then what happens is I'm looking at it. It's based on an Angular thing. So there's a hybrid approach and then there's a pure Angular site. So it really seems the marketing group went completely rogue on this, built their own portal in a sense, and based it on Angular. What's your guys' reaction to that?
First party is just another ISV, I guess, and bound to the same restrictions that us third-party vendors have at the same time. They're trying to meet their customers' demands within the platform restrictions. They have a certain amount of influence in the platform, and that influence hasn't necessarily brought them all of the things that they might want from a platform level to deliver the requirements that they need. And I think that's the thing that partners experience all the time, and they have to wait for the platform team or Microsoft to put a feature in, and then they can make use of it. And what we do all the time as partners is we find solutions to do those things without waiting for Microsoft, because our clients and those requirements need to be done right away. So it's definitely an interesting one.
From a developer perspective, I mean, I looked at, I don't know, I'm just learning Angular, so Angular is just yet another JavaScript framework, and there's a bunch out there. But Angular is a fairly popular one. So it's really a combination of like JavaScript and HTML, or I should say TypeScript. And kind of going through, you can do quite a few powerful things, building out sites using Angular, but you still need to be like fairly adept at coding and developer kind of styling and things like that. So what I'd be kind of, from a extensibility point of view, this is great because you can open up that Angular project in, Visual Studio Code. You can go and begin to manipulate it and all your layouts and templates and things like that. On the flip side, though, and it's interesting because I had another MVP reach out to me and saying they were actually using the marketing portal for their own local user group meetups. And this MVP, he wanted to change around some of the layout and where some of the things were and hide some of the text. And he said, and he knew traditional, I'd say traditional Dynamics 365 portals. And he says, I'm trying to find the web pages and the content snippets. I can't find any of that. And I said, no, it's different. And then I basically, opened up the code in Angular in Visual Studio Code and located it. And I said, you're going to need to change this HTML file and this script here. And for somebody who's not a coder, that's extremely intimidating. So I'm just kind of wondering, it's like you're kind of veering away from the citizen developer or the point and click kind of interface. So that to me was like, okay, and this is somebody just trying to do a very simple user group meetup. But is this something, Colin, in your experience, and George, like in terms of marketing departments and things like that, do they have these skills in-house? And is this for them just going to be actually a more powerful way to connect in the marketing app into their existing platforms?
I mean, I think your user group person, I kind of question them as to why the heck they're using Dynamics 365 marketing for their user group portal. Seems like a big thing, big sledgehammer for a small nail type of thing.
Well, I think it's a bit of a dog fooding thing, right? Like we all do it. The
XRM Virtual uses Dynamics 365 portals, but I think we've just used a custom portal and simple entities on it. I think marketing seems like a lot, but definitely dog fooding. If you look at huge enterprise marketing agencies, they have these front-end developers that will know Angular or know frameworks like Angular, or will at least know HTML and CSS like the back of their hand. So I guess it's who was marketing trying to satisfy? Are they trying to satisfy the average Joe trying to run a small user group site or a small marketing portal, or are they trying to go after big enterprise business that perhaps has these people on staff? It would kind of indicate they're trying to go after the enterprise business or the big accounts with this type of thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the big benefits of this approach is, and I think we've all run into this, where we go into a customer, talk about portals. They already have a established web presence. They already have a high-end CMS like Sitecore or something like that. And the portals is, if there's some features, that's great. And from a marketing perspective, it's like, okay, we already have a CMS platform. Why do we need another one? So then we can, if you're using this Angular framework, that's something that plays very nicely with some of these other enterprise level CMSs.
It can, yeah. I mean, we did the same kind of pattern at Doxio, where we had a companion website to add this functionality or custom functionality we couldn't do. And that's sort of what they're doing here, is they're having a companion web app that they can host either within the Dynamics portal or on their own, which is kind of interesting.
Yep.
And they share the authentication and everything, and they suggest using B2C so that you have your identity abstracted from Dynamics, and it can easily be shared. It's a really interesting one. I'm curious where it goes, what actually becomes of it. They've provided like a very skinny level of documentation on it, so it's really hard to approach and understand. I think you're only going to have advanced developer people kind of touch this type of thing, and it's going to... I think you need
to, like I took a look at it. Yeah, the documentation is, pretty light at this point. But I think you need to be pretty comfortable with like the Angular concepts. And I think if you are, then it makes it a lot easier.
I think if you're familiar with a front-end JavaScript language or a framework, then it definitely is.
Can we just? I'm curious, and that's what I've been myself struggling with. Break it down to how it's actually built, because there are a couple options. There's self-hosted, so you don't even have to have portals, or it can be based on Dynamics 365 portals. Then the question is, why would I want to do it? What the advantages of one method or another method, and so on and so forth. So, to me, I'm just looking in docs, which is we just talked about. This is official documentation, right? So I'm saying the event management portal consists of two parts. Oh, no, it's not event management portal. It's the event management event portal. Okay?
Yeah.
So it's just for managing events within the event management. Two parts. Front end, so Angular, Vanilla JS. For some reason, it's with capital V. Is that the thing? Vanilla JS with the capital V? Is that another framework? I'm
Not that I'm aware of.
No, me neither.
Well, it's like noun.js and any noun.js, you know. It's kind of fall into the category I always use, let the other guy do the work.js framework. And then there is a REST API backend, right? So this front-end framework doesn't talk to Dynamics directly. It talks to the REST API backend. That is some kind of a wrapper, which makes sense for events. Event-specific wrapper. So if you want to build something like that, you would follow a similar pattern, right? So you build API around your model, whatever your model is. If you're doing project, it will be project API backend. Now, my question is, well, front-end is on front-end, so where this REST API backend lives?
So I think they've put things into the portal code right now and built their REST API backend in that portal, I would imagine.
That's part of it. When I go to Dynamics 365 portal hosted, that's what it looks like. Portal instance has API. Yep, so they extended portals with this specific API. But what if you're doing self-hosted? Is there a server-side code that you run?
Not that they're providing that I've seen.
So
I
who's
think it's
providing
up to
the
you.
API?
You are providing the API.
But do they provide the code for that API?
I do not think so, no. Not that I have seen.
So you have to implement this REST API?
Environment configuration
That would be a bit too much to ask. I mean, that's why I'm getting confused. I mean, the diagram doesn't say nothing except API plus business logic, customizable. So I would thought that they do provide some kind of API for the backend, for self-hosted version. Anyway, that would talk to the directly to the instance, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like well, you know, we kind of look at, we could probably re-engineer this infrastructure. It's kind of weird on a podcast, but the other thing, with this approach, do you guys see this, you know, this concept or this technology bleeding into other areas? So if we have customers that are not necessarily using marketing, but they have some portal or kind of web integration requirements, do you think someone would take, you know, this marketing portal, this framework, and as a template, and begin to extract and build their own thing?
I don't see why not. As I said, this is just a model of implementation. I see perhaps there are better things or similar things coming in some kind of generic way. This one is geared towards events, but I don't see why that cannot be generalized as a, I don't know, it wouldn't be a framework, it would be more of a reference implementation for your own things. So yeah, but the same approach is kind of JavaScript front end talking to some back end that talks to Dynamics. And I just found in documentation, I found the answer to my earlier question. The front end can be fully customized and hosted by yourself. Additionally, you can choose to use our backend service, or you can develop your own backend. So, Colin, you're spot on as usual, and the choice is either use the baked-in backend of the Dynamics 365 portals. But funny thing, I think you don't have to use Dynamics 365 portals themselves. So you don't have solution installed. So the code, it runs on the same web hosts as the portal web code. But that particular code doesn't depend on the portal itself, on the portal solution being present.
It would just be way too complex if they were to try to abstract that outside of the portal. They'd have to set up a whole other hosting paradigm for themselves as the marketing team, and they don't want to do that. Probably that's too much investment for them, but why not leave it open for the client or the customer to take the choice and do it themselves? I mean,
so that kind of makes sense. Makes sense. So they still kind of using bits and pieces of the portal infrastructure, Dynamics 365 portals infrastructure, but not necessarily. They don't necessarily rely on the portals as a solution being present in Dynamics. Now, my question is, what is the advantage of having it as portals?
The advantage of having the backend as portals?
No, advantage of if I elect to have Dynamics 365 portals installed and configured, right? Then what is the advantage over not having the portals as a solution?
I mean, so with portals, you get all of this functionality on steroids that allows you to access all your Dynamics data. A lot of scenarios can be met with the out-of-the-box configuration-based components, but there's also a whole wide set of scenarios that can't be met using their components. So there's always... The portals has never been, at least from my perspective, it's not a CMS engine. It has those components in it to meet the base ask of people, but it is not that. It is all about authenticating against a contact record and exposing data related to that contact, or exposing data from Dynamics in general. So you can, as an event place, you can fulfill a fair amount of scenarios with that, but there's probably a bunch of scenarios that you want to fulfill in a more custom fashion. And
it's understandable. I'm just reading again. I'm reading through docs, and it says if you choose Dynamics 365 portals, you get this set of web pages, a standard portal web pages that you can customize further, and so on and so forth. So you do have an actual Dynamics 365 portal that uses kind of very customized front end, which is common scenario for you because in your previous role and at Adoxo and right now, I guess you're getting involved in a lot of scenarios, similar scenarios with the companion app and things like that, right?
Yes. Yep.
So that's kind of familiar territory for you. I'm more curious if you're not using Dynamics 365 portals, so you're still using the REST API backend, but you're not using Dynamics 365 portals to serve those pages, where those pages would come from.
Your CMS.
So you would have to serve, so you kind of embed your bits and pieces. You would serve your JavaScript, front-end JavaScript out of your own CMS. And then those pieces would talk
so or either out of your own CMS or a companion app. Like when we...
Yeah.
So when we build our companion app, we serve all of our components out of that companion app and just inject them into whatever CMS. We want a consistent place where we don't necessarily have to have a dependency on a certain CMS of any sort. So that's why we choose to host them out of that companion app instead.
Okay, so now it clicks. Would it be correct to say that when you're looking at the marketing or event management front end, right, what you have is a pieces of Angular, which is kind of HTML and JavaScript, that take care of all the event management stuff, right? These bits and pieces need to be served out of somewhere, and that could be either Dynamics 365 portal web pages, And then you get all the goodness of the web pages, direct connection to kind of other Dynamics 365 entities. You have your liquid and what's not. Or you can serve it out of your own CMS, whatever that happened to be. And then you still talk to the REST API hosted by Microsoft, or you can develop your own. But the point is you don't get those web pages and goodness of the portals with that. But you get the upside of your own CMS you're comfortable with, and you can skin it and do what's not. Okay.
Yeah, I would say,
let's do a test.
It's so
Nick,
hard.
Nick, did you understand the word what I was just saying?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. If Nick got it, we good.
Thanks.
Nick is the not as much of a developer these days. So.
Oh, neither am I. As I said, I'm kind of moved away from development, and the less I develop, I consider the project to be a better place if I don't do any development, and not because I get someone else to do it, but if I can get the project done without doing development, then it's a success. Like right now, I need to write a few lines of a plugin code, and it's kind of I keep pushing it back and back and say, I really don't want to do it. I really don't want to do it. Not because it's hard.
Just waiting for.
Pardon?
You're waiting for parity with Flow, and then you don't have to write the plugin anymore.
Yeah, I keep postponing it. Now, what's interesting to me is, and Colin, because you get involved with the frameworks quite a lot, what's interesting to me is the choice of Angular, because within Dynamics 365 team, I think there's a bias towards React.
Yeah, there definitely is.
Is that kind of what you have available? Marketing team found two cool Angular super dudes, and they said, we can do it in React in 6 months, or we can do it in Angular in 2 weeks. Make your pick.
Maybe. I think I would hope they surveyed the marketing agencies out there as to what their expertise was, and then decided on Angular. Angular is also like .NET Core's like choice of framework as well. It's in a lot of the Visual Studio templates by default. So,
that's interesting.
So it's not a weird choice from Microsoft. I guess it's a sort of a weird choice from the Dynamics team, because they are tied pretty heavily in some ways to React. Although I think they have a branch of React that they maintain themselves. It's not full-on React. So,
not the vanilla.
But I think
React.
once you know, not vanilla React, yeah. But once you know one, like it's very easy to adapt to another. We use Vue.js a lot.
Vue is good. It's lean and mean. There are a few of those. Yeah.
I think our pick of Vue was it was super lean and easy to introduce non-JavaScript developers to. And we had a lot of legacy people that were used to doing server-side code, like standard old ASP.NET, linking your non-MVC type developers. So it was a lot easier a roadmap to get them in on things.
Yeah, Angular certainly has a learning curve. Once it's passed, but it's probably the biggest. If we compare the three, it's probably the biggest framework of all. A lot of people say, look, I'm not JavaScript kind of guy at all, but a lot of people I know and respect and who make their living out of that, they saying that Angular is good, but the downside of Angular, it's kind of our way or highway. They don't give you too much flexibility in how you do things. Is that a fair assessment? Just overall broad assessment, I suppose.
I'd say it's pretty broad. I think like all of the frameworks have extensions methods to them, and ways of going above and beyond. Maybe it's the barrier to entry to making those extensions that makes that kind of a comment. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of impartial to Vue myself, so I don't do a lot of Angular, so I might not be the best one to comment on Angular's
look,
ins and outs.
When I compared, I certainly biased towards Vue because it's lighter and was easier for me to comprehend, and that's exactly what you said. I used to be a backend guy, and it was much easier for me to dig into Vue than into Angular. Angular was just too much, stuff to learn to get anywhere.
It was too different, I think.
I suppose so. I wonder what's why React is the choice of platform team.
I don't know. You could make a bunch of guesses. Microsoft's partial ownership of Facebook. Who knows?
Yeah, React is Facebook stuff, right?
Yep. Yeah.
But they all, look, the upside is they're all open source. Make a pick. If you want to kind of replicate the stuff that what they've done in Event Portal with Vue or React, be my guest.
You could definitely do it.
You can definitely do it. I mean, what's nice to me, so just to wrap up this discussion, what's nice to me is that it's a different way to do things. It certainly could be used as a reference implementation right now. A bit biased towards, marketing and things like that. But what I hope for with CDS for portals being on radar, that a good solid reference implementation, generic one, using this model would come along with the CDS for portals. So give people tooling rather than shrink wrap solution.
I'm not sure you'll see that right away. But
no, not right away.
That
I'm not saying
amazing for sure.
I'm not saying I don't hold my breath for April release, but down the track, maybe October, maybe next April, something like that would be really, really nice.
Yes, we will have to pester the Portal team about that, although I feel like me and Nick do that on a regular basis enough. So, but yes, that would be an ultimate picture for them to do that, and perhaps of them being part of the platform more so now and focusing on that platform, they will have that capability more so than focusing on the apps as they have in the past. So, but only time will tell.
Yeah. So definitely some exciting stuff coming, and I think that was probably a very deep dev session that we talked about today, which is, I think, not a bad thing at all. That was pretty good. It's going to be interesting to see how this all comes up.
It'll be very curious to see if another app at Microsoft, another first-party app, picks up what the marketing team's done and has a similar requirement or something and does the exact same thing, or makes use of it, or does something completely different. So I think that'll be very interesting to see.
Yeah, it would be, because, I don't know if you like all the different apps that are coming out now, like holy cow, there's... And
ladies and gentlemen, Colin just answered the question we asked at the beginning, why self-service was dropped from the portals.
There you go. You're building it in Angular.
Yeah, you can get...
So, cool, guys.
That was awesome. Now finally, the upside is that I finally understand myself, how does this thing work. Colin tend to know these things, but reading through Colin posts is like reading someone else's PhD. It's like you need a stiff drink and 2 hours to get through the post.
Did Colin post a blog post lately?
No. But I'm still going through 2017.
Oh, right, yeah. So it's all about quality, not quantity.
Just post unique things, that's all. I have not had a unique thing to talk about recently, so...
Hey, look, we're all unique. Talk about yourself. I do it all the time.
That's on another blog. You have to have the password to that one. So.
Cool. So, in the next little while, what are some of the upcoming appearances? Any conferences you're going to? Any speaking gigs? Any other exciting stuff going on?
I'll be at UG Focus in Houston in about 2 weeks, just under 2 weeks.
Is it before or after the summit?
Before the week before.
The week before the summit. Okay.
Yeah, I will not be at any of the European events, so not Serum UG and not Extreme Europe in Amsterdam this year. So.
I think by the time this goes live, we might have an official announcement. The Bad Masterclass is coming this year to Hawaii.
Hawaii, I'm coming. Sign me up. I need to get people there.
Are you? Because we're definitely going straight after the Business Application Summit. If you want to take a small break and learn a thing or two, we've got it covered. We've got 2 days in beautiful...
2 days. I'm telling my employer it is 7, but okay.
Oh, you can pay for 7 and come for 2. Yeah, definitely. And to make it more interesting, we've got Mad Edition to that, the Maker.
Cool.
And more details to come, but just flagging it. It's the first, I think, public announcement that we made, but we just...
First I've heard about it. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I sent a couple of people to the last one that you held here in Toronto, and they loved it and had nothing but good things to say about it. So
brilliant.
I would highly recommend it.
Brilliant.
I was in the cheap seats for that one, and it was awesome. It was really, really good.
You were sitting at a child's table, right?
Yeah, me and Daniel Kai were sitting side by side in the child's table in the back, but still got a lot out of it.
Yeah, Daniel was I always kind of keep glancing at Daniel and say, is it approved? Is it approved by Daniel? If Daniel is nodding, then we're good. Then we're good.
Yeah.
If Daniel's shaking his head, you better shut up. Yeah.
No, that was a good time, and just I think a shout out to Nelson Lopez. Colin and I have been talking. We wanted to have Nelson on this podcast. He's, for those of you who don't know Nelson, he's what's his official title? Colin, partner technology strategist or something.
Something like that. Yeah, I can't remember. I'd have to go look at an email signature from him.
If you've been doing Dynamics 365 or CRM work in Canada, your paths have probably crossed with Nelson. He's been with Microsoft for all the time I've been doing CRM anyway, which is kind of a long time. And very awesome guy, very extremely helpful, very enthusiastic about the platform. So just I want to have a big shout out to Nelson.
Absolutely, he's been instrumental in getting Toronto, our Toronto class off the ground. So, and we had a full class, so definitely big shout out to him. So hopefully he can help us repeat success in Hawaii. So mark the dates. That's gonna be 13th and 14th of June.
Very cool.
Wow, right after. Yeah,
right after. So when people travel, might as well travel a bit farther and enjoy Mai
it's
Tai
just
or
a
two.
hop. Just a hop to the islands from Atlanta, so
It's actually
Atlanta's
not
a
too
hub,
bad.
so-
It's like 9 hours flight. Depends which way you fly, but it's 9 hours flight.
says the guy from Australia who has a 9-hour flight to anywhere.
So all you need to do is download Colin's blog posts before you get on the plane, and you might get at least through one or two by the time you get to Hawaii from
Absolutely.
Atlanta.
Oh, funny enough, Hawaii turns out to be exactly halfway between Sydney and Atlanta in flying times. So it's like takes 9 something hours to get to Hawaii, and then 9-something hours to get to Atlanta. So it's literally halfway. So if you want to break your journey, that's going to be the way to do it.
Perfect.
Okay,
Cool.
guys.
So I'm heading out to not going to Focus, but I'll be heading to Amsterdam. So I will be at the D365 UG Summit. I might kind of pop my head into the extreme side for a few things. I think I might have got kind of volunteered to help a little bit on the innovation challenge with Extreme, at least part of it anyway, because it's just based on my timing. But I'm also going to be teaching at this UG Academy, teaching my class on portals. So Amsterdam is not as exciting as Hawaii, but if you want to learn all about portals, the MS Learn site's good. It's like your first aid course, but if you want to become an actual medical doctor in portals, come check out my class. There's still lots of spots available, and if I'm not allowed to say, but I'm going to be taking students out for beer after each class.
Ooh.
And to a gym session before.
Yes, definitely a workout session. But so speaking of upcoming, I'm actually lifting. Here's my little self promo. Totally not portals related, but I am lifting in the Canadian Nationals next week on Tuesday. If you're into powerlifting at all, I'll be lifting Tuesday morning in the Master 1. So now you can guess my age, but I've been training. Nothing hurts. I'm touching wood. Lifts are going good. So hoping for some PRs, and we'll just see how that all happens, how that turns out.
I'm more into fork and glass lifting myself.
I'm all about the glass lifting. I know Nick is about the glass lifting as well, but when he trains, he has to put it down. So
yeah, no, the beer fridge is full, Colin. So it's like they're waiting for me.
Okay, gentlemen, it's been
all right, guys.
A pleasure. I hope that I certainly learned a thing or two. So thank you very much. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
And always remember, refresh the cache.
This has been Refresh the Cache, the Dynamics 365 Portals podcast from CRM Audio. Check out this and other podcasts at crm.audio. If you have any questions about portals for the team to answer, please send them to voice at crm.audio. You can subscribe to the CRM Audio network of podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, or any place else to find podcasts are offered. This is a production of Dynamics Podcast LLC.